So, picture this. You walk into a crowded room.
Oh boy. We all know this feeling.
Right. Maybe it is family gathering with this endless sea of familiar faces. Or, perhaps it is a high-stakes professional meeting.
Exactly. And instantly, before anyone even says a single syllable, you feel it.
Yes. You feel a literal tightening in your chest. The air suddenly feels, I don't know, impossibly dense.
Like it is charged with this invisible friction.
Exactly. You look at one individual across the room, and an entire constellation of past slights, old arguments, and unspoken resentments just rushes into your mind.
It completely hijacks your nervous system.
It really does. And then you look at another person, and your brain immediately begins anticipating a future conflict.
Right. You are scripting out a complex defense for an attack that literally exists nowhere except in the theater of your own imagination.
Yes. In that singular moment, you feel entirely at the mercy of the room's energy.
You are convinced, down to the marrow of your bones, that the external world is this hostile, unpredictable force.
And that it is actively acting upon you. I mean, your only option is to brace for impact, right?
It is the absolute definition of psychological exhaustion.
Totally.
And the crazy part is, it operates as the universal baseline for human interaction.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. What you are describing is the core confusion we all face daily. It is that overwhelming, suffocating sensation of being a passive victim to our circumstances.
Because we navigate our existence harboring this profound, unexamined belief.
Right. We think our stress, our anger, our anxiety, and even our fleeting moments of joy are directly caused by the people and events outside of us.
We really do. The internal monologue is just always conditional.
Always. We tell ourselves that, if only that specific person altered their behavior, peace would be attainable.
Or we convince ourselves that if only a particular external situation resolved itself, we could finally exhale.
Exactly. We're perpetually trapped in a reactive cycle.
Just constantly attempting to manipulate the external physical environment?
Yeah, just trying to carve out a tiny, temporary sanctuary of safety.
It feels akin to being adrift on a flimsy raft in an endless tide of a stormy ocean.
Merely paddling hard enough to delay the inevitable drowning.
Right. So our mission today is to embark on an expansive intellectual expedition into the absolute mechanics of human perception.
A complete paradigm shift.
Exactly. We are exploring a radical framework of non-dualistic philosophy that asserts the exact opposite of our daily lived experience.
And when we say the exact opposite, we mean it.
Yeah, this paradigm claims that the external world does not cause our internal emotional weather in any capacity.
None whatsoever.
Rather, our internal state projects the world we perceive.
Which is a huge pill to swallow for most people.
Oh, absolutely. But the goal of this exploration is to equip you, the listener, with the conceptual architecture to completely reverse your thought system.
Shifting from a paradigm anchored in fear and separation to one of infinite unity and absolute peace.
Because we are not just tweaking our reactions here, right?
No, not at all. We're attempting to dismantle the entire foundation of how we construct reality.
Okay, so to even begin grasping the magnitude of this inversion, we need to look at the foundational binary of existence.
Right. We must examine the fundamental architecture of the mind itself.
So on one side, we have absolute reality.
Yes. And this reality is rooted in infinite unity, absolute truth, and a pure, unadulterated state of absolute love.
Which, you can conceptualize as universal intelligence.
Exactly. And its defining characteristic is that it is immutable.
Meaning it never changes.
Right. It does not fluctuate, it does not react, and it is completely without opposite.
And because it has no opposite, it knows no conflict.
Precisely. That is the baseline of absolute reality.
Okay, so if that is one side, the other side of that binary is the realm of illusion.
Yes, where the overwhelming majority of human experience seems to take place.
Right. And this realm of illusion is entirely manufactured.
Completely. It is rooted in fear, separation, and the construct of the false self.
Also known as the ego.
Right. But we can bypass the elementary definitions and look directly at its mechanics.
Let us do that. Because the false self operates on a strict, unyielding principle of scarcity.
It does. It constantly broadcasts a frequency of lack.
Like, not enough love, not enough resources, not enough safety, not enough time.
Exactly. And because its very existence is predicated on this perceived lack, it exists in a state of continuous, desperate demand for defense.
It firmly believes that to secure its own survival, it must attack.
It has to attack, judge, categorize, and definitively separate itself from all other perceived entities.
I often visualize this dynamic like a corrupted operating system.
Oh, that is a great way to look at it.
Right. Like, if my computer is infected with sophisticated malware, the virus does not merely damage a few superficial files.
No, the really insidious malware tricked the operating system into thinking the virus itself is the core programming.
Exactly. It camouflages itself as a vital, non-negotiable system process.
And the false self functions identically.
It does. It convinces us that it is our adult, rational, protective identity.
It whispers that we must attack others to maintain our boundaries.
And we implicitly believe it because the malware has successfully spoofed the signature of our own internal voice.
Right. We literally cannot distinguish the parasite from the host.
That is the terrifying part.
It is. Applying that analogy further reveals the tragic irony of the human condition.
How so?
Well, the false self acts precisely like a parasitic program. But a parasite cannot exist without a host.
Ah, right. And the host in this scenario is the infinite consciousness that we actually are.
Exactly. The framework posits that life is an intricate, cosmic game of forgetting and remembering.
We enter this dense physical form and become so utterly identified with the malware.
Yes, we become so entranced by the illusion of separation that we forget the absolute reality of our infinite unity.
We suffer from a profound cosmic amnesia.
We forget that our true, unaltered operating system is pure love.
And instead, we mistakenly believe we are the localized, vulnerable avatar fighting for survival in a hostile digital landscape.
Which is just a wild thing to realize.
It is. And the truly terrifying part is how undeniably visceral the illusion feels.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, when the malware generates stress, anger, or physical pain, the physiological response is undeniable.
The heart rate spikes, the cortisol floods the system.
Right. It creates a parallel reality where the unreal feels infinitely more tangible than the supposed underlying unity you are describing.
Yes, and it feels viscerally real because the false self relies exclusively on perception.
And perception is a deeply flawed mechanism.
Entirely flawed. Perception is completely subjective.
It is inherently volatile and permanently bound to the endless cycle of beginnings and endings.
Right. But true knowledge, the awareness of universal intelligence, does not rely on sensory input.
True knowledge is constant.
Exactly. It is not subject to the chaotic whims of the day or the unpredictable actions of another individual.
It simply is.
Yes. However, the parasitic false self requires you to rely entirely on your volatile perception.
So that you remain suspended in a state of perpetual fear.
Because fear is the electrical current that keeps the malware powered.
Wow. Okay, so if you were to access true knowledge and realize your absolute safety, the false self would instantly power down.
Exactly. Its survival depends on your continual belief in threats.
That makes so much sense. But if the mind is running on this corrupted operating system of fear, the immediate question is how that internal corruption generates the physical environment we interact with.
Right. How does it manifest externally?
Yeah. How do we traverse the gap between a mental state of internal lack and the perception of a hostile room full of antagonistic people?
That is the big question.
Because the bridge between the internal mind and the external reality is where most philosophical frameworks stumble.
They do. But the mechanism bridging that gap is arguably the most radical assertion of this entire paradigm.
Okay, lay it on me.
The foundational principle here is that the physical world you observe is entirely neutral.
Entirely neutral.
Yes, it possesses absolutely no inherent meaning, no intrinsic value, and no independent agenda.
It is just a blank canvas of physics.
Exactly. The framework asserts that we formulate a decision about what we desire to see internally first.
Okay.
And then we project that internal decision outward, superimposing it onto the neutral world to make it our reality.
Projection makes perception.
Precisely. You are the architect of your own localized illusion.
The implication there is staggering.
It really changes everything.
I mean, if projection makes perception, then the world is not happening to me.
Right.
The world is happening entirely by me.
Yes.
But let us ground this. If I look around my office right now, I see a door, a desk, a ceramic cup.
Okay.
Are you suggesting that the cup on my desk is just a neutral arrangement of atoms, and my brain is doing all the heavy lifting to turn it into a meaningful object?
I am suggesting something far more profound than mere neurological processing.
Okay, I am listening.
When you look at that cup, you are not genuinely seeing the cup as it exists in the pure, unadulterated present moment.
What am I seeing then?
You are seeing an endless tide of past associations.
Like memories.
Yes. You are perceiving every previous instance you held a cup, every childhood memory of a broken glass, the specific comfort of the warm beverage you consumed this morning.
Even the aesthetic judgment of its design.
Exactly. And the broader cultural significance of a drinking vessel.
So I am perceiving a vast, complex constellation of historical data.
You are literally blind to the cup as a neutral object in the now.
Wow.
You are projecting a dense historical narrative onto a completely neutral piece of ceramic, and then interacting with your own projection, utterly convinced you are interacts with reality.
That is incredible. And if my mind is doing that to a simple ceramic cup, the complexity must scale exponentially when I'm dealing with dynamic human interaction.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, consider the daily friction of a morning commute.
The ultimate testing ground.
Right. If another vehicle aggressively cuts into my lane, the standard response is a spike of adrenaline and intense anger directed at the driver.
Very natural reaction.
But through the lens of projection-making perception, my anger has absolutely nothing to do with the other driver.
Nothing at all.
The event itself, a metal chassis moving into a spatial void ahead of my vehicle, is inherently neutral physics.
It means nothing.
The physical movement of the vehicle is neutral. The immense emotional resonance you experience is entirely dictated by the projection of your false self.
Exactly. In that fraction of a second, the false self scans its database of lack and vulnerability.
And it immediately projects a narrative.
Yes, it says, this individual is actively disrespecting me, or I am constantly taken advantage of.
Or the world is fundamentally a hostile and unsafe arena where I must fight for space.
Right. So the intense anger you feel is the physiological echo of your own projected thoughts of scarcity and attack.
I am reacting to my own internal broadcast, not the neutral movement of rubber and asphalt.
It is wild when you realize it.
I am effectively walking around the world with an incredibly powerful film projector strapped to my forehead.
Yes, exactly.
Everywhere I look, I am exclusively watching my own internal movies playing out on the blank canvas of physical reality.
And then, in the ultimate act of absurdity, you scream at the canvas because you dislike the genre of the film you are projecting onto it.
That is hilarious, but also painfully true. That is the precise psychological trap that ensnares the entirety of human consciousness.
It is. And because the mind is so unimaginably powerful, we deeply, unquestioningly believe the movie is reality.
We react to our own projections with genuine physiological intensity.
Defending ourselves against insubstantial shadows while entirely ignoring the projector.
Right. And if we follow this logic to its absolute terminus, we arrive at the most heavily defended fortress of the false self.
The illusion of sickness and the neutrality of the physical form itself.
Yes. This is where the friction against our daily experience becomes almost unbearable.
It is a very challenging concept.
Because we can accept that a ceramic cup is a neutral canvas, or that a traffic incident is a matter of perspective.
Sure.
But the physical body feels entirely different.
The body feels undeniably autonomous.
It really does. It demands sustenance, it experiences fatigue, and it falls victim to illness.
It feels like the ultimate, undeniable proof of our vulnerability.
Absolutely. So how does this framework address the body?
Well, within this specific philosophical framework, the physical body is stripped of its presumed autonomy.
Okay.
The body is viewed merely as a temporary learning device.
It is entirely neutral in its fundamental nature.
Right. It possesses no independent will, no inherent intelligence, and absolutely no ability to create or degenerate on its own accord.
It operates exclusively, without exception, in response to the dictates of the mind.
Exactly.
The implication there is that biological illness is not arbitrary.
It is not.
If the body is neutral and only responds to the mind, then sickness cannot be a random physical failing or merely a matter of bad luck with external pathogens.
The paradigm radically reframes sickness not as an invasion from the outside, but as an active, albeit unconscious, decision made by a mind that has aligned itself with the false self.
Okay, I need to scrutinize this carefully.
Please do, because it is controversial.
Because the concept of sickness as a decision often triggers immense cognitive dissonance and can easily be misconstrued as blaming the victim.
Absolutely. It is a very sensitive topic.
When someone is suffering from a devastating physical ailment, telling them they chose, it seems intensely callous.
It does.
Let us delineate between the conscious, rational mind that desires health and the unconscious malware that might be generating the illness.
That distinction is paramount. It is never the conscious waking self that desires the suffering of illness.
Of course not. The conscious mind desperately wants to be free of pain.
Exactly. However, the malware, the deeply unconscious false self, operates on an entirely different agenda.
Right, because its primary objective is to prove that the illusion of separation is real.
Yes. And what better method to prove that we are isolated, fragile, and entirely at the mercy of a hostile universe than to manifest a vulnerable, failing physical body?
Wow, sickness is the ultimate argument of the false self.
It is. It uses the neutral body as a billboard to broadcast the message, look at this physical decay.
Look at this vulnerability.
You are obviously nothing more than a fragile meat suit.
And the idea of infinite, invulnerable consciousness is a delusion.
Exactly. Sickness is a misguided attempt by the unconscious mind to validate its own belief in separation.
This dramatically reorients the entire methodology of how we approach human suffering.
It flips it completely upside down.
We currently allocate the overwhelming majority of our collective resources, intelligence, and capital toward fixing the external symptoms.
We tirelessly treat the body. We try to optimize our environment.
We attempt to engineer absolute physical safety while almost completely ignoring the underlying state of the mind that is generating the distress.
Returning to the cinema analogy, it is the equivalent of trying to change the ending of a tragic movie by furiously scrubbing the physical cinema screen with a sponge.
Rather than walking up to the projection booth and swapping out the digital file.
Exactly. We exhaust ourselves scrubbing the screen.
We manipulate the external world endlessly in a futile search for equilibrium.
But if the core programming of the mind is actively projecting a state of disease, a fundamental belief in separation, guilt, and fear, the inherently neutral body has no choice but to manifest that instruction.
So true healing, therefore, is not primarily a mechanical intervention on the physical form.
True healing occurs in the exact, instantaneous moment the mind realizes that suffering offers absolutely no genuine value.
Wow. When the mind irrevocably decides to stop utilizing the body as a weapon to prove its own vulnerability, the foundational need for the illness evaporates.
Yes, the body, being an entirely neutral servant, simply follows the newly established instruction of peace, unity, and wholeness.
Okay, but if the physical body is merely a neutral learning device, a temporary environmental suit we don for a specific curriculum,
Yes.
what happens when that suit ceases to function?
The question of death.
Right. How does this framework address the ultimate, terrifying unknown of mortality?
It addresses mortality by entirely dismantling the premise of death.
Dismantling it completely.
Because the paradigm establishes that you are not the body. The cessation of the body's biological functions is completely irrelevant to your actual existence.
So death is reframed not as a final catastrophic end or an obliteration into the void.
No, merely as a shift in frequency.
A shift in frequency implies continuity.
Yes,
The signal persists even if the receiving equipment is discarded.
exactly. Imagine a complex radio tuner.
Okay.
When you slowly rotate the dial and the music from a specific station fades into static, you do not mourn the death of the music.
Right. You understand that the signal is still broadcasting continuously through the ether.
The receiver simply shifted its frequency alignment and is no longer translating that specific signal into audible sound.
And leaving the physical form operates on identical mechanics.
Yes, it is simply a transition of energetic focus.
It is the shedding of a restrictive shadow in order to step into an unimaginably greater expanse of light.
The infinite, localized spark of consciousness that constitutes your true identity cannot die.
Because it was never truly born into the physical body in the first place.
Precisely. The body was merely a temporary classroom.
And leaving it simply means the specific curriculum of that physical lifetime has concluded.
That conceptualization strips away the primal, paralyzing terror that the false self relies upon to maintain control.
The absolute dread of annihilation.
Exactly.
But it also begs a massive question regarding our current daily reality.
Which is?
If we are infinite consciousness, and we are not these fragile bodies, and the physical world is a neutral illusion, why are we participating in this?
That is the ultimate existential question.
What is the function of navigating this dense, challenging, neutral world if none of it is ultimately real?
The function of the experience is the unlearning of the illusion.
The unlearning.
Yes, the physical realm is the gymnasium where we build the muscle of true perception.
And the absolute, undeniable, ultimate classroom for this rigorous unlearning process is our interaction with other human beings.
Yes. Our relationships are not incidental features of our existence. They are the core curriculum.
Relationships are the crucible.
They absolutely
Are
are.
the source of our most profound peaks of joy. but inextricably linked to our most agonizing depths of suffering.
which makes them the perfect testing ground.
So how does navigating the friction of human interaction accelerate this unlearning process?
They act as the primary vehicle for human evolution because they provide the ultimate mirror.
A mirror for our own minds.
Right. According to the foundational principles of this thought system, there is no such thing as an accidental encounter.
The concept of randomness is entirely discarded.
Entirely. From a fleeting, momentary glance exchanged with a stranger on a crowded subway to the most complex, lifelong, intimate bond.
Every single interpersonal interaction is a perfectly mathematically orchestrated opportunity to practice forgiveness and heal our fractured perception.
Yes.
The idea that every encounter is perfectly orchestrated implies an underlying intelligence to the friction.
It does.
If I have a painfully antagonistic interaction with a difficult colleague, the framework suggests that specific individual was placed in my trajectory exactly when I required them.
Placed there by the synchronous nature of universal intelligence to perfectly reflect your own unresolved internal state back to your conscious awareness.
That is intense. To understand this dynamic, the framework draws a stark contrast between two entirely different modalities of connection, right?
It does. The default state for humanity is what it defines as the special relationship.
In common parlance, designating a relationship as special is the highest compliment.
Usually, yes.
It implies unique value and deep affection. But given the context of the false self we have been establishing, I suspect this terminology is pointing towards something deeply problematic.
You are correct. It is the ultimate, most seductive trap engineered by the false self.
Seductive because it feels so good at first.
Exactly. But the special relationship is entirely rooted in a mutual, unspoken agreement of profound internal lack.
It operates as an unconscious bargain struck between two individuals who fundamentally believe they are incomplete fragments.
They gravitate toward one another in a desperate attempt to extract worth, safety, validation, or identity from the other person.
I love the classic metaphor for this. It is of two completely empty vessels, violently clashing together.
Yes, each frantically attempting to drink from the other.
Yet both inevitably remain perpetually empty because neither possesses an internal source of water.
That perfectly describes the architecture of codependency and countless toxic interpersonal dynamics.
The underlying contract is entirely transactional.
Completely. I will provide you with affection, loyalty, or security, but you must constantly validate my existence and make me feel whole in return.
It is an emotional economy based entirely on scarcity and extraction.
And the moment one partner fails to provide the required extraction, the affection instantly transmutes into intense hatred.
Because the affection was never actual love.
No, it was merely the satisfaction of a hostage negotiation.
Wow. A hostage negotiation. That is so bleak, but so accurate.
The false self thrives within the special relationship because the constant friction, the inevitable disappointments, the jealousy, and the relentless keeping of scores continually reinforce the illusion of separation and vulnerability.
It is a closed loop of suffering masquerading as intimacy.
Exactly. Now, in stark contrast to this exhausting dynamic stands the awakened relationship.
Now, if the special relationship is an economy of extraction, the awakened relationship must operate on a completely divergent energy source.
It does us.
What does that architecture look like in practice?
The awakened relationship begins from an unshakable foundation of absolute wholeness.
So no empty vessels here.
None. Two individuals come together not because they require the other to fill an agonizing void, but because they have independently recognized their own inherent completeness.
They do not join to extract, they join to amplify.
Exactly. It is the convergence of two distinct light sources,
They offer unconditional acceptance.
actively choosing to focus entirely on the absolute reality of the other person's infinite true essence, while gently ignoring the inevitable glitches and malware of their partner's false self.
In a theoretical vacuum, that sounds deeply peaceful.
It is the ultimate peace.
But we must address the extreme friction of human behavior in the actual world.
We do.
Because people inflict profound trauma upon one another.
That is an undeniable reality of the physical realm.
If an individual is actively engaging in malice, betraying trust, or exhibiting cruelty, attempting to passively observe their true essence feels not just difficult, but actively destructive.
I completely understand why it feels that way.
How does this philosophy navigate genuine conflict and aggression? I recall a specific concept indicating that every human action is either a pure extension of love or a desperate cry for love.
Yes. That specific conceptual distinction is the key to unlocking the entire mechanism of forgiveness.
Okay, explain that.
It asserts that there are ultimately only two categories of human behavior.
Just two.
Yes. Every single action, regardless of its external complexity or apparent malice, is either a genuine extension of love from the true essence or a distorted, desperate cry for love generated by the false self.
So when an individual attacks you, whether through a sharp linguistic barb, a complex psychological manipulation, or a profound betrayal,
They are operating entirely under the influence of their malware.
they have momentarily severed their conscious connection to their true essence.
Exactly. They are submerged in terror, experiencing a profound sensation of lack.
And their aggressive attack is actually a tragically distorted, desperate cry for the exact unity and safety they have forgotten how to access.
That is exactly what it is.
I have to challenge this premise aggressively.
Before it.
If an individual is actively attempting to harm me, reframing their malice as a cry for love seems dangerously naive.
It can sound that way, yes.
Does this philosophy require us to become passive, defenseless victims in the face of psychological or physical abuse?
Not at all.
Does it advocate for the dissolution of personal boundaries under the guise of spiritual enlightenment?
That is a vital, necessary challenge, and the answer is an emphatic, unequivocal no.
Okay, good.
This framework does not advocate for remaining in abusive physical situations, nor does it require endorsing, permitting, or suffering through harmful behavioral patterns.
So we can defend ourselves.
Remember, the physical world and the body are neutral learning devices.
Right.
You can absolutely, resolutely, physically remove the neutral body from a dangerous spatial environment.
You can establish absolute, impenetrable logistical boundary.
Yes, you can take whatever physical action is necessary to protect the neutral form.
Okay, so where does the forgiveness come in?
The profound alchemy of this system does not occur in the physical world. It occurs entirely within the internal state of your mind.
Ah. You change your physical location to protect the body, but you change your perception to protect your mind. So, establishing a boundary or leaving a toxic situation is physically necessary, but the internal act of forgiveness is entirely separate from the logistical response.
They are completely separate.
Forgiving the individual does not mean concluding that their behavioral malware was acceptable.
Forgiveness, within this specific paradigm, has absolutely nothing to do with pardoning behavior.
What does it mean then?
Forgiveness means resolutely refusing to download their malware into your own operating system.
Oh, I love that phrasing.
When you judge the attacker, when you harbor hatred, when you rehearse the grievance endlessly in your mind, you are actively choosing to carry their poison within your own consciousness.
You are maintaining the energetic link.
You are choosing to drink a vial of poison while stubbornly hoping the other person dies from the toxicity.
Wow. So true forgiveness is the profound, liberating realization that their attack was merely an illusion generated by their terrified false self.
Yes. Their actions have absolutely no bearing on the integrity of your absolute reality.
By recognizing their hostility as a tragic cry for love, you free your own mind from the agonizing prison of judgment.
You observe their profound confusion without feeling the slightest need to subject your own consciousness to their storm.
That constitutes a massive paradigm shift regarding justice and retribution.
It completely neutralizes the ego's insatiable appetite for revenge,
Or the intoxicating drug of righteous indignation.
which is highly addictive.
It is. If
Yeah.
I'm gripping tightly to a grievance, if I'm defining myself by how I was wronged, I am the singular entity generating my own suffering.
You are the one keeping the terrifying movie playing on the projector.
Precisely. You are supplying the electricity to the projector.
The external event concluded, but you are choosing to continually re-render the trauma in the present moment.
So, to permanently disconnect the power supply to that projector, we must undergo a radical cosmic shift in our cognitive habits,
We have to actively, systematically retrain the machinery of the mind.
which introduces the logistical application of this philosophy.
The how-to.
Right. How do we execute this retraining? Because grasping the architecture intellectually is stimulating, but when I am submerged in the heat of a crisis...
When the adrenaline is flooding your system.
Exactly. When the malware is screaming that I am under attack, the ancient neural pathways take over automatically.
The reaction feels instantaneous and entirely beyond conscious control.
So how do we stop it?
Overcoming that automatic response requires engaging in a vast, disciplined constellation of mental exercises designed to systematically unlearn everything we currently believe to be true.
Unlearn everything.
Everything. We've spent an entire lifetime and perhaps the accumulated momentum of countless generations reinforcing the dense neural pathways of fear, rapid judgment, and immediate separation.
So it is not a quick fix.
No. To achieve true unclouded vision, we must willingly and repeatedly embrace the terrifying concept that our current highly cherished thoughts are inherently meaningless.
And that our perceived reality is, in fact, a completely blank slate.
Yes.
It's the equivalent of a total psychological detox.
A rigorous, uncompromising detox.
We have to purge the corrupted data before we can install the new operating system.
And the absolute starting point for this process requires adopting a position of profound, radical intellectual humility.
What does that look like?
We must genuinely, sincerely acknowledge the statement, "I do not understand what anything is for."
Oh, wow. That sentence alone is incredibly difficult to genuinely internalize.
The ego fights it tooth and nail.
The false self absolutely thrives on the conviction that it knows exactly what everything is for.
It really does. It possesses an immediate, rigid opinion on the flow of traffic, the intentions of a colleague, the trajectory of the global economy, the temperature of the room.
It labels, categorizes, and judges the utility of every single atom it encounters.
And every single one of those rigid opinions is merely a projection of past data onto the neutral present.
So by intentionally and repeatedly stating, "I do not understand what anything is for," you are effectively throwing a wrench into the gears of the projection machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are hitting the pause button on the continuous stream of historical narrative.
You are actively bringing the chaotic mind to a state of total receptive emptiness.
This state is often referred to as the 0 point.
The 0 point. I like that.
It is only when the vessel of the mind is entirely emptied of its preconceived judgments that it creates the necessary vacuum to be filled with something new.
By reaching this quiet 0 point, we allow universal intelligence, the perspective of absolute truth and unbroken unity, to gently flow into the void.
We establish a firewall against our own historical data.
We stop using the damaged files of the past to interpret the pristine neutrality of the present moment.
The process demands that we actively observe our fears, our anxieties, our deepest hatreds, and our most petty grievances.
We do not engage in the spiritual bypass of suppressing them or pretending we dwell in constant bliss.
No. We bring the dark, terrifying shapes of our fears directly into the blinding light of conscious awareness.
And in that light, we recognize them not as monumental, solid threats capable of destroying us, but as insubstantial shadows.
Because shadows possess no physical mass.
No inherent energy and no power to cause harm.
They merely appear to temporarily obscure the eternal presence of the sunlight.
Let us transition this from abstract philosophy into a practical thought experiment for the listener right in this exact moment.
I think that is a great idea.
I want you to comb through your current life and isolate a specific situation that is currently generating a profound sense of anxiety or dread.
Perhaps it is a looming financial instability.
Or a deeply fractured relationship with a family member or a professional crisis.
Isolate that specific scenario and hold it firmly in the center of your consciousness.
Notice the immediate physiological cascade it triggers.
The tightening of the jaw, the shallowing of the breath, the acceleration of the pulse.
The body is reacting to the mind's projection of a threat.
Now, hold that exact scenario in your focus and deliberately apply the core universal principle of this framework.
Speak this phrase to yourself internally with genuine intention.
I am determined to see this differently. I could see peace instead of this.
I am determined to see this differently. I could see peace instead of this.
Just feel the weight of those words.
Simply articulating those words, even in the context of an experiment, creates a palpable, visceral shift in the internal pressure system.
It functions like an emergency release valve.
It obviously does not instantaneously solve the external logistical complications of the financial crisis or the fractured relationship.
No, the external variables remain identical.
But it completely, radically alters my internal orientation toward the problem.
Exactly. You are no longer a victim being crushed by it. You are an observer choosing how to relate to it.
Because in that specific moment of conscious choice, you have momentarily severed your alignment with the false self's frantic demand for panic.
And you have realigned your internal receiver with absolute reality's constant offering of peace.
You have actively recognized that the suffocating anxiety is not a mandatory response to an external event, but a choice of perception.
And by recognizing it as a choice, you immediately reclaim your ultimate power to select a completely different perception.
I frequently utilize an analogy regarding the weather to stabilize myself in these
Oh,
moments.
I know the way you mean.
It is akin to the sudden realization that the sky is permanently, immutably blue.
Right.
Occasionally, an endless tide of dense gray storm clouds rolls into the atmosphere,
The thunder crashes, the lightning strikes.
and the storm feels incredibly violent and completely overwhelming.
During the chaos, we panic.
We become entirely convinced that the storm is the ultimate reality and that the blue sky has been permanently destroyed.
But the blue sky did not leave.
It did not alter its nature, and it certainly was not threatened by the moisture in the clouds.
It is simply temporarily obscured from our limited vantage point by the shifting weather patterns.
Our innate perfection, that underlying state of absolute peace and unbroken unity, is that infinite expanse of blue sky,
It is permanently present.
completely untouched by the chaos, simply waiting for us to stop staring obsessively at the storm clouds.
That is a remarkably precise articulation of the required cognitive shift.
Thank you.
The entire arduous process of unlearning the illusion is simply the daily, minute-by-minute practice of recognizing the storm clouds for exactly what they are.
Impermanent, insubstantial, chaotic weather patterns generated by the volatile mind.
And actively remembering the vast immutable presence of the blue sky resting peacefully behind them.
Expanding this beyond the mitigation of daily stress, the implications of this unlearning process are staggering.
They really are.
We're not just attempting to feel a marginal degree of relaxation during a difficult conversation.
No, we are discussing a fundamental seismic shift in the definition of the human experience.
We are discussing the reclamation of the ultimate potential of what we genuinely are.
The paradigm forces us to abandon the pathetic, limited narrative that we are fragile, isolated biological organisms.
Navigating a hostile, random, and meaningless universe, desperately fighting each other for diminishing scraps of survival.
It demands that we recognize ourselves as individual, radiant, indestructible sparks of an infinite consciousness.
We carry the absolute totality of universal power and creative capacity within the core of our being at every single moment of our existence.
We hold the unfathomable power to completely reshape our reality by simply reshaping our internal perception of it.
When we consistently and bravely choose to see the inherent innocence in ourselves.
When we stubbornly look past the aggressive malware and focus entirely on the true essence in others.
We are not merely engaging in a clever psychological trick to reduce our blood pressure.
We are performing an act of cosmic alchemy.
We are actively drawing a state of profound grace down into the dense, chaotic physical realm.
We serve as the necessary bridge between absolute reality and the realm of illusion.
By choosing peace, we become transparent conduits,
allowing the blinding light of universal intelligence to shine brightly through the dense, suffocating clouds of human fear and separation.
We cease functioning as terrified projectors broadcasting nightmares onto the world.
And we begin operating as beacons extending light.
However, achieving and maintaining this state requires immense, unrelenting vigilance.
It is definitely continuous practice. The false self will constantly, aggressively attempt to reassert its control over the operating system.
It will repeatedly tempt you with the intoxicating drug of justified anger.
It will offer you the deeply addictive chemical hit of righteous indignation.
It will whisper that holding a grievance is a necessary shield that protects you from future harm.
But the framework has exposed that mechanism.
We now possess the understanding that holding a grievance is simply drinking the poison and expecting the world to suffer.
Therefore, every single interaction, every passing thought, and every emotional reaction is a profound crossroads.
Every moment presents a binary choice.
You can choose the familiar, painful dynamics of the special relationship, prioritizing extraction, defense, and lack.
Or you can choose the awakened dynamic, prioritizing wholeness, extension, and absolute unity.
You can choose to perceive a hostile, attacking world that victimizes you.
Or you can choose to realize that the physical world is merely a neutral canvas, and you alone hold the brush.
It all circles perfectly back to that crowded, overwhelming room we visualized at the very dawn of this conversation.
Yes, the next time you walk into that specific room and you feel that painfully familiar tightening in your chest.
And the aggressive ghosts of past slights attempt to hijack your present reality.
You are no longer defenseless.
You possess a radically different conceptual tool.
You have the power to pause.
You can deliberately hit the brakes on the projection machine and drop into that quiet zero point.
You can look directly at the individual who historically triggers your deepest anxieties.
And internally state with absolute conviction, I do not understand what anything is for. I could see peace instead of this.
You can recognize their prickly, defensive behavior not as a threat to your existence, but as a deeply tragic, desperate cry for love.
And most importantly, you can absolutely refuse to allow their terrified malware to infect your pristine operating system.
You can stand in the center of that crowded room, not as a fragile victim bending to the whims of its chaotic energy.
But as the sovereign, deliberate architect of your own unshakable peace.
You become the calm, silent center of the storm, not because you have fought a grueling battle to disperse the clouds.
But simply because you have quietly remembered the indestructible reality of the blue sky.
Consider the immense, terrifying, and beautiful magnitude of your own thoughts. If the fundamental premise holds true, if every single thought you entertain is an active blueprint, actively building the exact reality you will step into tomorrow, what kind of universe are you choosing to construct right now in this very second? Are you meticulously laying the bricks for an impenetrable fortress of defense, or are you designing a bridge?